Purchase your tracks today.
All right, we are live for the IPS Evening Deprogram for February 26th, 2025. And the title of tonight's live stream is LUIGi-ITES Rising, the calm before the storm. Not that I have anything really specific to add about the LUIGi-ITES at the moment, but I'm just noting that there does seem to be some organizing happening right now. And it's getting started early this year. I generally don't expect riots until after May Day, which is a major communist holiday and the high point on the pagan calendar. But it seems that March the 4th, there's going to be some kind of uprising on the capitals of the nation. So we can look forward to that. Just making a note here, LUIGi-ITES Rising. What we're looking at here is the building blowback against Musk and Trump, which was really foreshadowed by the Green Beret with the Cybertruck who detonated it in front of Trump Tower. You had Musk, you had Trump, you had the Green Beret, which I think is a reference to the Luigi, to the class warrior. And I called him a class warrior right after it happened. And now you're seeing these groups organizing on the idea of no war but class war, deny, delay, depose, that whole manifesto that was written on his bullets. So Dwayne Aubith said, perfect timing, didn't know you were going live. Subscribe at ips.monster, free newsletter, and you'll get live stream notifications. I will be discontinuing live stream notifications and everything on Patreon at the end of the month. So you have a couple more days to get to the free newsletter at ips.monster. I'm just trying to save time, centralize everything, reduce redundancies on my part, and streamline and make everything more efficient, which has been one of the reasons I've been sort of off and on lately. I've been working on building the art business, but that's pretty much relaunched, so I can devote my time and attention to this. And today I was actually working on the storyboard for the new episode of South Pole, which I am committed to getting done by Friday for a premiere. And, weirdly enough, when I made the decision to start South Pole, I happened to be going through a storage room, and I found this shirt, which is South Pole. Not one of our shirts, but just thought that was an interesting coincidence. A sign from the universe, not a sign from the mediaverse. Predictive programming is not signs from the universe or the simulation. It's signs from the mediaverse. All right, we're joined by Let's Go, Jennifer Reeves, Brandon MDM, Dinah South, Azreli. We got some people over at Kick. I didn't know what Kick was because it hasn't inspired any mass murderers yet. That's how I generally find out about these new platforms. That's how I found out about Telegram. That's how I found out about Discord. And now even Reddit's become a hotbed for radicalism for the political left. Joined by Patreon, Clockwork113. Thanks for joining. He said, I want to join Gilded as there's no Discord anymore, but it won't let me create an account. Yeah, that's annoying. And I dislike this about Gilded. And I dislike Discord for other reasons. It's full of Nazis. However, I do have a Discord server set up specifically for IPS Press Pass holders. So if you're in the press club, or if you want to be, and if you want to be involved at all in the tabloid, in its production, as a contributor or otherwise, there's a Discord server. And there is a Discord server for the South Pole. So if you want to contribute to South Pole, it's not too late. I will be immersed in it for the next 48 hours. I was doing the storyboard, working out some of the scripting ideas, and some of the users in there have already generated characters. There's some elements that I can bring up. I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but Epstein Island is involved. The final experiment is involved. Elon Musk is involved, although he appears as a sort of Dr. Moreau. If you know about the island of Dr. Moreau and these weird breeding experiments, it's all in there. And this all connects to contemporary news, specifically with Musk and all of his babies' mamas and all that situation. And we have to include Nick Fuentes. I'll have to put that in my notes. And I have nothing against him, except, for his views and everything. But I think it's just highly ironic that he's like one of the top tier misogynists, and his entire existence is really just the result of a very strong woman who gave birth to this test tube baby, no father, gave him a great life, big house, nice upbringing, and now he's a big internet star who basically focuses his whole life on hating women and loving Trump and Hitler, like these two strong men dictators. Very interesting. If you psychopathologize the guy, just analyze him, and it's like it kind of explains itself.
New Ko-fi shop sale from Cope.
Thank you, Copaesthetic. Appreciate that. And that's the Kraken. Sounds like a Godzilla, but it's a kraken comprised of 10,000 penguins that amass into one entity. And it's coming soon. Constant says, I had the older press pass. Any reason to update it? No, not necessarily. I had to make a few minor changes to it because I got a new printer. But other than that, no. The press pass is forever. And it's not like you need these things, technically speaking. But it's a matter of, I think, professionalism to show that, yes, you're accountable for what you're doing. You're not just an internet poster. You're not just trying to get clicks. And that you do represent a body, an entity, a media organization. Brandon says, I'm ready to dissolve this ego world. All right, and by the way, there are some press passes available right now at the store. Brandon says, thank you for turning me on to Robert Anton Wilson. Yeah, Robert Anton Wilson is an interesting character. We could talk about him at length. In fact, we should do a deep dive into authors. We're always talking about movies, directors, Metascriptors, but maybe we need to delve into authors. We've touched on a few. Alan Moore, for example, Tom Clancy, but a few others. In fact, I was just looking through my bookshelf at this really strange book I came across last year, and it's called In the Country of the Blind. And the cover has a guy with an eye patch over his right eye and a nuke behind him. And it's authored by somebody named Michael Flynn, as in like General Michael Flynn, which is weird. There's a coincidence behind this book, a synchronicity, you could say. I was walking past a Goodwill, and I go in just to look at the books. And I was listening to a podcast about General Michael Flynn. And I see a book by a Michael Flynn. I pick it up. It's got the nuke. It's got the eye patch. And I open it up. And it's a book about the Q file being dropped into the media. What's the Q file? A reporter found out that all news globally was being directed by a small cabal. And this little group that was directing the news media because it had control, it was able to influence things because of its advanced knowledge it had due to its sophisticated computers, that they wrote out of the news. They wrote out of history. So in other words, our entire history had been compromised by totally controlled media. And again, this is fiction from like the 80s. And this reporter finds out about it and drops the information, doxing all the participants, all those part of the organization that have access to the capacity to steer our future. And when this person finds out about it, that is the protagonist, there are all kinds of assassins sent after her. They kill all of her friends. And she ends up getting recruited into the organization. But it's called In the Country of the Blind, and it's about control over history, which is what we're always talking about, through fake manipulated news. But the coincidences with this book are strange to me because, one, the synchronicity when I found it, but two, it has Q file, and it has numerous references to things that weren't even, I don't think, even relevant until 2016, 2017 with regard to this idea of a cabal and this mass doxing. And in this book, when they're doxed, the masses rise up and hunt them down, burn their homes. I mean, there's a blowback, which is why they remain in secret. And that ties into this Q narrative, one of their drops that says something about they will not be able to walk around in public when this information is revealed. It's just strange. Dwayne Obith says Chuck Palahniuk is an interesting one, potentially a metascriptor. I've read his Fight Club, which is kind of sparse. Like the movie really elaborates on the idea. And I read Haunted, which is disgusting. But you're right about this. I mean, one of his books fed into 9/11 predictive programming, Fight Club. Fight Club has the scene where his name is Jack Sparrow, the protagonist, whose power animal is a penguin. And he's talking about coating the columns of buildings with explosive gelatin. And as he's talking about this, you see the Century City Twin Towers behind him. The architect of the Century City Twin Towers did the Twin Towers in New York that went down. So he's talking about gelatin, explosives, bringing down columns. And at the end of the movie, of course, you see all the buildings falling. And I think all of this gelatin, explosive gelatin, ties into Gelatin B, the art group that they'd taken up residence in the Twin Towers in 2001. What were they doing? Something with helicopters, a ledge, opening a window so they could do some footage outside. They had some kind of art project, but it was scheduled to be premiered on 9/11, so we never saw it. Or we did see it, and 9/11 was it. Gelatin, Gelatin B, gelatin-wrapped columns, controlled demolitions. Many think Gelatin B is behind the jumpers. How do they get those jumpers, the footage of the people waving at the windows and stuff? Because we know how the jumpers actually happened, pneumatic cannons and dummies. Leo Pirate says Survivor by Chuck Palahniuk is narrated from a hijacked commercial airline. It came out before 9/11. Very good. Drawn by Tunex. Brandon says, love your tales of synchronicity. I have a separate blog that I keep private because when I talk about synchronicity, it attracts simulation theorists. And I have a problem with relativism. People who are just purely about relativism. Nothing is true. Everything is fake. It's like, okay, sorry. I'm not going to embrace that kind of nihilism and intellectual laziness. It's a non-explanation. It's not even a theory. But the simulationists are really attracted to this. And I understand why. But it's like synchronicity and Mandela effect are not the same thing. Mandela effect is a misinterpretation of recalled information. A synchronicity cannot be explained because it contradicts cause and effect and the idea of linear time, and it implies some direct interaction between the perceiver and the perceived, some kind of a union, like we're in some sort of a cybernetic system. And moreover, it suggests a relationship between intention, as in intentionality, and the resultant synchronicity. These things just don't happen randomly. Leo Pirate says, the main character is part of the Creedish cult, which is a mockery of the Jehovah's Witnesses and Seventh-day Adventists. Joined by Thirst for Truth. Thank you for joining. Karatori501 says, add me up on Discord to join your live stream. My name is... Okay. I can't tell if these are bots or not. And I was watching this video yesterday. I've been doing a lot of deep dives into ways to monetize what I know in terms of AI. Because I'm thinking there's got to be a way to use this to maybe generate content to sell, affiliate products. I've just been kind of diving into this area of the internet, and there's an entire set of videos on YouTube you can find that teach you how to create AI influencers. And they're getting so realistic that I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if a substantial percentage of OnlyFans girls don't exist. This webcam model doesn't really exist. Like, these are completely fake, and people are falling for it. People are probably giving their money and falling in love with CGI. And you can mock it, however, the general population is totally programmed into believing all sorts of weird things and paying money for things that don't exist all the time. From, climate change to fake space. Yeah, those are bots. Thank you for letting me know. That's why, a lot of these platforms are just full of bots. It turns out that I think and I stopped using Rumble because I think Rumble is like 80% bots and fake traffic. And they artificially inflate their numbers, and their ads are unwatchable and horrible. Like, I will not go to Rumble just because the ads are so terrible. Okay, let's see here. Probability of an asteroid that could strike the Earth in 2032 increases. Which one am I supposed to be worried about? Because the last time I checked, the planet killer nearest to us on a trajectory to kill us all is Apophis 99942, which is supposed to hit us on 4/13/2029. That's 3 years before. Happens to be a Friday the 13th. But yeah, Friday the 13th is a planet killer. It's called Apophis, named for the god of chaos. And it's going to kill us all, so don't bother recycling. Like, really think about it. They're telling us on one hand, we got to save the planet, change your life, live, ascetically. And on the other hand, they're like, the end is near. So which is it? If the end is near, then nothing else matters. But if the end isn't near, then they can't goad us into taking actions now. So I kind of think that the end isn't near. God's not going to judge us. Aliens aren't coming. Gaia's not going to judge us. There's not going to be any mutually assured destruction. None of the bad news that they give us is going to really happen. But it's designed to give us a sense of urgency so they can rip us off in the here and now. Okay, let's see. Jackie Star. Yeah, send me an email. Never got my 2 shirts. Did you order your shirts from where? I'd need some more information. I'm not presently selling any shirts, but I'm out. I used to get a lot of these shirts made by X-Pac, but I do have some on Amazon that I'm creating, and I have an Amazon merch account. But yeah, if you have any questions about an order, email me. If I ever get packages returned, I generally reach right back out and send them off again. Starboy Devoid says, most of my synchronicities occur digitally and when I have vivid dreams. Yeah, that's an interesting one too. The synchronicities I've had involving digital media make me sometimes feel neurolinked. Okay, let's continue. So anyway, probability of an asteroid is going to hit us in 2032. If that's going to happen, then don't recycle. Why bother? Trump posted this video. I don't know if you've all seen it. It's Gaza Trump, or is it? Yeah, it's.
Tunnels coming to set you free, bringing the light for all to see. No more tunnels, no more fear. Trump Gaza is finally here.
Trump Gaza.
Gaza shining bright, golden future, a brand new life. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump Gaza #1. Trump Gaza shining bright, golden future.
Now, there's a golden statue of Trump that looks like the golden statue of Trump from One-Eyed Jack's video, Dawn of the New Day. But if you haven't seen it, it's not a bad video. This is getting good. Like, it's scarily good. I think it's offensive to a lot of people, Trump Gaza, but Trump shared it. He retweeted it, or whoever manages his social media. It's all we've been hearing about for the last 10 years, what Trump's tweeted. But it has this image at the end of it. It's Netanyahu and Trump at some kind of a resort. It says Trump Gaza. King Ravana says, best pop song ever. P. Trippa says, I still wear one of the IPS t-shirts from a few years back. Oh, awesome. Well, there's going to be many more. Many, many more. I have some plans. And stickers. Yes, we'll do stickers. I'll do it all. I mean, I have all the resources now, and I've been developing this art store for a minute now, and I've been looking at it thinking, I could just as easily turn on the IPS shirts and stickers. Yeah, this is not a bad video, but Aaron Rupert says, complete batshit lunacy on the president's Truth Social. Yes, he really posted this. People are triggered. What's the news here? I mean, what are we really looking at? I mean, this is I don't know. It's almost like taking something very serious and then making it into a meme. I can understand why people would be triggered. Some people think that what we're seeing out there is just a never-ending movie set, a psyop, the theater of Psywar. I mean, I remember 10/7, 10/8. I remember a bunch of rubber dead people, fake dead people, and that's a thing. It's a big business. In fact, there are probably more hyper-realistic simulation training dolls than living crisis actors now. All right, yeah, so we'll have to do a new line of shirts then for the spring. I had a bunch of hoodies and stuff, but it's not the weather anymore. So here's a tweet from Synchronicity I found interesting. In George Romero's 1985 Day of the Dead, there's a zombie named Bub who dangerously waves a gun around. 2 years later, 1987, we saw Bud wave a gun around on TV and shoot himself in a horrifically shocking scene. Truly one of the, quote, darkest days of horror the world has ever known. So I recall this video of this guy named Bud shooting himself on TV. This could have been done with special effects. But what Synchronicity has pointed out here is that it seems eerily similar. The name, the look even, and the special effects at the time were at that stage. So here's another post, a follow-up. 2 months after Bud's suicide in 87, Savini appeared on Late Night with David Letterman to demonstrate how to simulate a gunshot to the head with special effects. And so here you have the special effects being performed, which would show you exactly how that particular trick was done. And this was when special effects
This AI tool is better.
Before everything was AI or CGI done post-production. These things could be simulated live because they were done with props and squibs. And I didn't know what squibs were until the Christchurch shooting. That's when I learned about squibs. We were like, why are the garments blowing up like there's a gust of wind?
All right. Okay, now this is the effect where a guy gets his head blown off, right?
Actually, it's an effect when someone is shot in the head.
Oh, a whole
and
different
the
thing.
Back of their head
Just
flies out
blows
against
right
the wall.
off.
Yeah.
Great, well, good, okay. So this would be fun if you have VCRs at home. You can slow it down and look at it in slow motion and just see the goop coming out of my head.
Great idea. So we opted not to use the coveralls. We better get this on.
All right, put that on. So
Okay, this is a special effects expert, Tom Savini, and they are demonstrating the exploding head effect.
Powder in a soda straw inside a condom filled with fake blood.
But how much powder?
About that much.
Okay, so the squib here involves a condom filled with fake blood. And a squib can be anything. It's basically a blood bag or ketchup packet. I mean, if you look at the 7/13/2024 fake assassination attempt on Trump, I'm pretty sure he had a Secret Service take him through a McDonald's drive-thru on the way to the rally and got some extra ketchup with his French fries because it was just a couple streaks. It's either that or the hat has some kind of a squib built into it. And I've been asking around, if you know somebody with a MAGA hat that says 4547, see if they'll let you squeeze it on the hyphen and see if anything comes out. Brandon says, my entire family has gone bonkers with rage about Trump. They get mad at me for laughing at it all, but what else are we supposed to do? Yeah, I know some people who are raging against Trump, and I know others who are pro-Trump, and they see what he's doing as, bucking the system. They actually see him as a renegade, like he's against the establishment. It's really interesting because Trump is the deep state. He's just a tool they used to get the limited government conservatives to worship the state, and it's worked. Okay, let's see. Jamarian says, I have an idea for a shirt. Take the UPS logo, make IPS letters, use their slogan, what can the auto hoax do for you? I could do that. I have a Amazon merch account, so it's very easy for me to put these things up, and then you get the service from Amazon. It's third-party fulfillment, but it's the fastest and most efficient that I've used. DeWine says, it's astounding to me how families allow this political theater nonsense to divide them. Well, they have no idea that it's theater. And the more emotionally invested into it you are, the less likely you're going to be able to see it. You know, the emotions are such a huge part of it. The sense of belonging to the cult, and they're no longer perceiving as individuals at that point. Braveheart 84, I saw a video earlier that showed a bunch of connections with Trump and the Wizard of Oz. Okay, I would like to know something about that. If you could send a link. And here's why. I was talking about the movie Wicked. And at the end of Wicked, the witch goes, she flies away, but she has this confrontation with the Wizard of Oz. And I thought that in this instance, we were seeing something here. Like, I was thinking the Wizard of Oz could be Trump. And it's played by, is it Jeff Goldblum? But anyway, the witch EMPs the Emerald City. You know, like purple clouds, storm, lightning, and it shuts the lights off. So Seattle is nicknamed the Emerald City because of the lush greenery and abundant forests that stay vibrant year-round. Now, the Seattle connection to the Emerald City is something I brought up because the movie had the blackout in the Emerald City and also came out on 11/3. But the other part of it is this, if Trump is being connected with the Wizard of Oz, it makes all the more sense because the witch is like basically shutting him down. It's her versus him, and I'm thinking maybe that's Trump versus Kamala or Trump versus the left. I'm not sure, but there is some kind of a beef there. The witch is also all green, says Leo Pirate. Starboy Devoid says smear campaign against the witch. Well, the series is the movie's interesting. The Wizard of Oz prequel is what it really is. And I think that the flying monkeys might correlate with drones, but the EMP at the end, and then it's a two-part. So that's the end of the first part. It just goes black. So that has to mean something. But then the Emerald City being blacked out, Seattle being blacked out, it corresponds with all the predictive programming for Seattle getting nuked. Cope says, got to get IPS merch out. Demand is high. We'll have some out by this weekend. And I'll try to actually order it and keep it here in-house as well. But I'll have the third-party sites carrying it soon. Someone had asked me to create the IPS shirt with the NPR design, and I'll do it again. It wasn't perfect, but I have an idea on how to make that happen. And I know which one you're talking about. Okay, let's continue. Yesterday we were talking about AI and how it's the devil. So today, okay, here's something from Raw Story. This is getting back to Donald Trump as Napoleon. So he's Wizard of Oz, he's Napoleon. This is one of the themes that we've talked about recently, is all these different aspects of Trump. So from Raw Story, Horace, this is the quote he used. The 32-year-old Norwegian considered himself a deep thinker and fan of the right wing and Russian propaganda. I'm talking about Anders Breivik. He argued that Western civilization was rotting from within because of multiculturalism, empowered women, racial minorities, and liberalism. So this is just a short excerpt from Anders Breivik's manifesto, which was copied, I think, by the guy from Christchurch, Brenton Tarrant. He says, I've come to the conclusion the system cannot be fixed and shouldn't be fixed. It has too many enemies. If we define the system as mass immigration from alien cultures and the suppression of speech and tolerance, then this is going to collapse. So this is the manifesto where in this he has the statement, he who saves his country violates no law. The phrase was recently quoted 3 weeks ago on January 24th by El Salvador's president, who also tweeted, he who saves his country violates no law. And this apparently goes back to Emperor Napoleon, but it was used by Trump. And it says here, this declaration was not a passing joke or a meme. He wants us to see it, to hear it, to know what he means. He shoves it in our faces. declaring it to the world, quoting Anders Breivik. Now, one more point here. It says, it's so troubling that Trump tweeted the Napoleonic phrase that Breivik made famous. Because this phrase, along with the 14 words and the 88 code for Hail Hitler, are also connected to it. Now, if the 14 words ties into a couple of things. I mentioned The Madness, the Netflix show. Been talking about it quite a bit. And in it, the leader of the white nationalists is Brother 14, which they don't say it in the movie, in the series, but it's obviously a reference to this 14 words. And when Elon Musk retweeted this quote by Napoleon, he added 14 American flags. And very few people connected these things. The 14 flags to the repetition of the statement, and seemingly a callback to Anders Breivik and his ideas about ethno-fascism. Joe Saunter says the EMP might be that our minds are blank. Leo Pyre says, doesn't she also cast a spell to create the flying rage monkeys? I didn't make that connection. But for the last year, ever since the WHO on 8/14/2024 declared the monkeypox a global emergency, and then Bad Monkey came out, and we were talking about the rage monkey virus from like 28 days later, which has a new one out now. And then we were talking about Monkey Man, then Black Myth, and all these various instances, chimp crazy, of the rage monkey meme being promulgated. It was very concerted. You had a 90-foot tall statue of the monkey god erected in Houston at the same time that the Black Myth video game about the same character has millions of concurrent players getting into the new version. So I'm just saying, these things were all correlated. And what we had noted is that the rage virus is talking about whatever it is going to be that takes down Seattle. The domestic violent terror attack is being symbolized by the rage virus. Or the madness. The madness is about this rage virus. That is, in 28 Days Later, you have these chimps that are forced to watch violence on TV until they become violent. So the idea is that it's a mind virus that makes one violent. That's the case in the madness. But the flying monkeys correlated with the witch and the EMPing of Seattle, connect the idea of the drone, the delivery system, but also the rage monkeys, because the whole part of it is it's an act of rage against the system. It's an act of rage triggered by demagogues promulgating the memes that turn them into violent extremists. Michelle K says, I would love a waterproof sticker for my water bottle. A penguin would be great. Okay, I'll take note of that. Waterproof stickers, that's actually a good idea. I'm sure I can find them. King Ravana says, don't the billionaires want a catastrophic economy? Interesting question. I mean, 2020 was one of the greatest transfers of wealth of all time from the bottom to the top. Jeff Bezos made how many $1 billion during the first quarter of 2020? That's right, 33 billion. And then after that, he made another 13 billion in a single day. Jackie Starr says, did you see the space junk that fell in Kenya? I did see a story about it, if it's not the same one. And the space junk story has been blowing up as we said it would. And it's been accelerating as we said it would. Because it correlates with the madness. The idea here is that billionaires have to be stopped. We can't have a political economic system that allows billionaires to exist. Because billionaires are individuals who can destroy entire systems. For example, Musk is destroying cyberspace. Musk is destroying low Earth orbit. They're making complaints already about Musk and his proliferation of what? CubeSats. But what's the point of Starlink? The point of Musk taking over the internet is so he can continue to deliver what? The madness, disease X, the memes. So you can see the disruption that we're experiencing through Musk as they're explaining it, it's the result of these, the unfiltered free speech, unmitigated free speech absolutism, and we're experiencing its consequences. And they're making the case for censorship and for, of course, taking away the power from the very, very rich individuals. And this all ties into the madness, but also Luigi. Because in the madness, the CEO gets shot. In the madness, the killer of the right-wing leader, Brother 14, is protected by the communities. So you have these class warfare type themes that involve murders that are considered to be social justice. And the public, the masses, the working class are in support of these things because they see the billionaires as oppressors. So it's all tying together. Again, LUIGi-ITES rising, the calm before the storm. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Dwayne says, anyone who believes Musk is the richest man in the world is incredibly naive. Well, Musk is an operation, obviously. There's a small chance that he doesn't know that space is fake and that he doesn't have the security clearance to know this, which is possible. I mean, you know, given his ketamine use and who knows what else, he could be a liability if he were just to blurt something out. Such as, it must be real because it looks so fake. And there are some reports out there that he doesn't have the security clearance to go backstage, so he may not know. And if he doesn't know, then he's like Truman in a Truman Show. King Ravana says Bitcoin is crashing hard. I did see something about that. Buy the dip, they say. I don't pretend like it's not Ponzi schemes, but what isn't a Ponzi scheme? You know what a big Ponzi scheme is? Q. MAGA. Invest all your social capital into the cause, and the Great Awakening will come, and everybody will rush to you for the answers. You're part of a special group, inside knowledge, and it will be worth a lot in the future. Get in on the ground floor. Meanwhile, the only people benefiting are at the very top. Dwayne says, I think he's a useful idiot. It's entirely possible that he is not fully in the know. I almost feel like it would be to his advantage to be insulated. Like, I wouldn't want to know. I don't think anybody would. I think that, you know, and I'm not quite sure. I mean, there's this point where it's like, maybe there's a possibility he doesn't know. Maybe he's in on it and it's all duper's delight. But I often wondered, Apollo 1, you know, we had the Challenger explosion that's been widely analyzed, and it's obviously a PR stunt hoax, but I wondered, could Apollo 1 have been a real incineration and perhaps recorded? Because what better way to get people to keep their mouths shut? Imagine you're an astronaut and you're ready to go to space, and they're like, well, space is fake. And if you tell anybody, look, watch this tape. And then you would be less inclined. You're like, yeah, sure, I'll dangle from a bungee cord and pretend to be floating in space. Just please don't incinerate me. It's been suggested that presidents are shown the JFK assassination as kind of a not so subtle warning as to what would happen if they ceased to just be puppets to some hidden power structure. I mean, they're all puppets. I said this the other night. The World Stage Theater is a puppet show. I mean, if you disagree, let me know. Which person on the world stage is not a puppet? I'd be happy to know. And if they're not puppets, they're likely following puppets. What major transformative historical event wasn't a psychological operation? I'd be happy to know. Jamarian May says, a lot of these, quote, people like Musk and Steinbart who talk very strange are not organic human beings. 91 Oki says, Musk has to know about the red car movie set with the astronaut they put in space. You know, there are so many Easter eggs attached to that particular launch. We're talking about Starman. that I'm inclined to think the whole thing is just an elaborate PR stunt hoax and even a ritual of some kind. Mr. Satan. Starman, anagram, Mr. Satan. David Bowie on the driving in the vehicle as an effigy. Don't panic on the dashboard. A reference to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which has a supercomputer in the middle of the galaxy called Deep Thought, which might tie into Grok and AI and everything else, but nothing about it was coincidental. Everything was so contrived. When I look at psychological operations, I look at them as though it were directed by someone like Stanley Kubrick, and the details matter. And the amount of detail on this thing makes me think it was all just completely phony. Not to mention the fact that it looks fake. It's also something of a perception test. If somebody thinks it's real because they didn't really pay attention or they heard about it, if they just believe the headlines, then that's one kind of believer, an auto-believer. They didn't even think about it. What I call low information believers. But the people who really look at it and think it's real and their jaws drop, what do you call them? These true believers, fools, obviously, but I call them visually illiterate. That they have been rendered in. This is like a new form of illiteracy. I mean, illiteracy is bad enough, and it creates power disparities, knowledge disparities, etc. And the ability to read is a major leveler of the playing field. But now, even if you can read, it doesn't matter because we've been rendered visually illiterate. And if you can't tell real from fake from the visual lies, then you're just as manipulatable by those in the know. And if you look at it and you think it's real, it just tells me that no, you are actually outsourcing your perception to the mass media. It means that you have a new dominant sensory apparatus. It's not your sight, it's not your hearing, it's not your sense of touch. No, it's actually the screen. Joe Saunders says, the movie Capricorn 1 is pretty telling how they had to fake it for the money. You know, I should probably watch that. It's bad that I haven't. I should have watched it by now. Copaesthetic says, Elon will take down the ISS with Tom Cruise while still... Oh, that's right, while filming a movie on it, hopefully. That's a mind bender. They have this movie production studio. I think it's called Axiom. They're adding a movie studio to the ISS. So it's another module. So on the space station, you're going to have a movie set. And if you're in the know, as we are, you're like, wait, it's a movie set that's pretending to be real, that's going to have a movie set on it, that's pretending to be real, but it's going to create stuff that's going to be presented as not real. And whatever comes out of that movie that Tom Cruise makes will look better, in my opinion, than what you see in the ISS. And this will create some cognitive dissonance. That's what I mean by mind bending. Because if he were to dumb down his movie special effects to not outshine NASA's supposedly real production, it would be unwatchable. It would be as boring as the ISS. Like Tom just dangling from a bungee cord with his hair sprayed up. But they have to bring it down because the special effects are the limiting factor. You know, the limiting factor to traversing the universe is special effects and the gullibility of the public. And we've been rendered visually illiterate, so we're ready to be fooled by the fake Mars bases. But now they just need to get the special effects up to par. Yeah, a movie set within a movie set. It's a conundrum. I mean, it's mind-bending. Like, how is it that the astronauts are there dangling? Sometimes they awkwardly do these flips and the wires tug at their skin. Their faces turn red. They got veins on their forehead because their blood is rushing to their heads. You can see these individuals monkeying around, pretending to be in space. And then you look at the latest sci-fi on Netflix where people are gliding through space, and it's, you know, the cutting edge special effects. And you compare it to the ISS, and it's like, okay, well, this is a discrepancy here that people are seemingly not noticing because it hasn't been brought to their attention. And I thought, once they bring Tom Cruise up there, it's a game changer. because his movie's going to look better. There was that movie called Gravity with Sandra Bullock. And this is just to show you that I was brainwashed before. I was in the box. I was watching this movie, Gravity. And then after, I saw this interview with the director. And someone said to him, what was it like filming a movie in space for 3 months? And I thought, yeah, that's a pretty incredible feat. And everybody started laughing. And I'm like, what do you mean? Why are they laughing? Because it was preposterous that they would film it in space? Apparently so. I didn't know. I just believed it. I thought they filmed the movie in space. Does that make me dumb? No, it makes me naive, or I was naive. Jackie Star says, what do you say to people who lost people in these simulation events? Well, you don't know anybody. The best that we have is hearsay. Oh, I know somebody. My neighbor's best friend's dog walker had a cousin whose sister died on 9/11. You have these liars all over the place. You had George Santos, one of the biggest liars of all. So many politicians do this stuff, but they attach themselves to things for clout. And he's like, my grandparents died in the Holocaust. My parents died on 9/11. I died at Sandy Hook. You have all kinds of people saying, I know people who died of COVID. I know people who died of the vax. I know people who died of fill in the blank, school shooting. They're all liars. And so what do I say to people who lost people in these sim events? I used to have people call in all the time, and they would say, I know somebody who died on 9/11. And I would say, what's the name? And they would say, I don't want to say. So you're calling to tell me you know somebody, but instead of cherishing their memory, you're going to keep it a secret. And one of them I goaded into giving me the initials for the name, and I looked it up on the spot. Wasn't there on the list. So I would just call them liars. That's what I would do. What do you say to people who lost people in these simulation events? Yeah, liars. And I have not met anybody who's had a compelling story that actually attaches themselves to an event. And a lot of these people, they lie for clout. Deep inside the rabbit's hole, Dearth, or Fed, Flat Earth Dave, used to say that his friend who was an EMT was dodging falling bodies on 9/11 and was so traumatized that she spends half her day on a psychiatrist's couch talking about the trauma of falling bodies. And he said, therefore, I shouldn't say nobody died. And I remember at the time wondering, why won't he do this live? Why does he only call me privately to tell me this? Well, it turns out he lied about being a witness. I mean, he lied about being a 9/11 witness. How many others have lied about it? Countless. We just have to recognize that there's this, the pathological liar in the room, the screen, but then the people who believe it are liars by proxy, and they actually feel like they have a moral high ground for believing the lies. It's the nature of belief. I am specifically fomenting a culture of disbelief. I'm a non-believer. I'd rather know. And I don't just say it's fake because I'm a non-believer. I say it's fake because the information I have, which in total is more information than the believers have, has convinced me it's not believable. I mean, that's kind of the paradox here, is that we, the non-believers, know more about the fake news the believers believe in. We're informed non-believers. What's heavier, informed non-belief or low information belief? Well, the low information believers think they're up here, but no, they have the intellectual and moral low ground because they are by default on side with the mind war. They are on the side of the terrorists. They are with the enemy in that sense. They've identified with it. They've merged with it. Thirst said, didn't Dave Murph P. also have a 9/11 claim? Yes, he was a volunteer fireman, and he was supposed to be in the towers. Dave Murph P. and Dearth, both of them, fake 9/11 witnesses. Meowry says, it happens with funerals too. Suddenly, the deceased was everyone's best friend. Joe Santos says, I met a cop who said he broke his back on 9/11 at the Pentagon. I didn't ask him because I didn't want to get arrested or something. Yeah, liar. Total liar. Shameless liars. You got to ask them for details. And see, this is the thing. These types of lies work on people who have a good conscience. If you're a good person, you will fall for this stuff because, like, well, I would feel bad telling the victim to their face that they're a liar. And most people back away from it. That's called emotional manipulation. So when someone says, what would you say to the survivor or a victim's family member? I'd be like, well, I'm not emotionally attached to this, so I will go to their face and tell them they're lying. I'm like, produce tears right now on the spot or you're a liar. We have to be comfortable calling liars liars. We really do. It's like we're shamed like against saying this, like, oh, that's too terrible a thing to say. No, it's really not. Look how many decades they've gotten away with impugning the character of conspiracy theorists. So you're a non-believer, so they hate on you. They tell people that you're a terrorist, that you're dangerous, that you're mentally ill. So the conspiracy theorists are the ones seeking the truth. And the liars have been chastising them for decades. So it's time for us to push back. If you're a conspiracy theorist or auto hoaxer media skeptic, you have every right to call the believers liars. And if they just believe headlines, they're liars by proxy. Ashy Dog says, I know somebody that knows somebody whose mother died. It's always like that. It's I know someone who knows someone, and that's not good enough. And this applies to everything. There are people who say, I've never seen the International Space Station, but a lot of people say they saw a light. Therefore, I believe in it. So you believe in something because a lot of people saw something, but they can't specifically identify it as such. And maybe you could get away with that at some point up until like 2024, December 2024. But ever since the drones invaded New Jersey, we no longer have to trust people who claim to have seen satellites or space stations or UFOs, because every single one of those thousands of drone sightings were exposed as airplanes. How? Take the video, take the metadata, date, time, location, direction, cross-reference it with flight tracking websites, and wow, at the exact time that you thought you saw a drone, there was an airplane right there. And it was all of them. There were no drones. And so now I am even less inclined to take somebody's word for it if they say, well, the app said the space station was coming and I saw it, but I didn't record it. Dwayne Aubith says extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Yeah, here's another thing. We're the devil's advocate. We're the skeptics. When somebody says, prove nobody died, it's like they're speaking as media advocates. If somebody says, well, devil's advocate, what if it's real? No, we're the devil's advocate. You're the media advocate. And if the media has not provided a burden of proof, then none of your friends can. None of the audience members can. They have less information. So you don't need to take peer pressure seriously. The believers are low information believers. And that's all of them. If they're mainstream media consumers, they are both passive consumers of information and they're low info believers. That's all of them, sadly. Got some comment here. I'm trying to catch up here on your comments. There's quite a bit here. Jackie Starr says, I'm not lying. My aunt did her portrait. Yeah, I'd like more information, but I'm just saying it's dubious. Like, what event? Tell me what school shooting was real. Tell me what terror attack was real, and then we'll talk. But if your frame of reference, if your information about the event is only what you saw on TV, you don't have enough information to call it real. And we have enough information to doubt the veracity of the media's claims. How do you know your TV's lying? It's on. You know, it's like, how do you know? It's that simple. It is a liar. Even if it's telling the truth, even if you're watching the news and the sky's blue and they're reporting, hey, the sky's blue today, it doesn't matter. It's still a frame of reference that represents a worldview monopoly. And it's what they're not telling you that shapes much of our worldview as much as what they do tell us. Salty says, my brother worked at the Pentagon, NSA, during 9/11. They were instructed not to go to work that day. No one was in the Pentagon either. Braveheart84 says, I noticed around the time the movie Don't Look Up made everyone in their minds look up, and a month before they were looking at the ground for something like earthquakes. Yeah, Don't Look Up. If you haven't seen it, it's fascinating because it's about Earth about to get hit by a comet, which is ice. So it's like an iceberg, and it represents the Titanic and the iceberg, and the metaphor of the Titanic as the West. Too big to fail, hubris, it's about to sink. But people are rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic as it sinks. They're not, and it's all just describing climate change. And in the movie, instead of deflecting the comet, the rich billionaires decide to mine the comet so they can make more iPhones. And what happens is, well, they miss the opportunity to deflect it and the Earth gets destroyed. So the lesson there is, if we don't stop the billionaires, we're all going to die. Because they're going to go to space and mine asteroids and bring down trillions of dollars in wealth to fuel the capitalist machine, which will destroy the Earth. So you can correlate the comet with the iceberg. And who's the face of Don't Look Up? Leonardo DiCaprio. Who's the face of the Titanic? They made these connections, not quite subliminal, but it's really in your face. Ashy Dog says, the world is less scary knowing everything is fake. Yeah, exactly. Ataraxia, peace of mind. Like, I am not worried about nukes. I'm not worried about terror attacks, war, mass murder. In fact, I look forward to it. I'm hoping for a major plot twist. Riots, even civil war. Who here is bothered by the proposition of civil war? Is it keeping you up at night? Are you buying storable food items from, internet doomsayers because the end is near and all that? I have a feeling that green hoodies are going to do very well. And supposedly Luigi caps are doing well. But again, the title of the live stream tonight, LUIGi-ITES Rising, the Calm Before the Storm. Next week, March 4th, there's going to be some kind of leftist, I don't know what, insurrection. They're going to bring out the trash cans and burn them. 91 Oki says, I knew a kid who did a school shooting, Fort Gibson, 4 wounded, all others are fake. Well, here's the difference, though. We're not saying everything is fake. If you say that's not a serious claim. It's as unserious as saying everything's real, which is how most people operate. So everything's real, everything's fake. Both of these are wrong approaches. It's fake unless supported by the evidence. It could be presumed fake, given that it's coming from liars, but there are certain hallmarks of a hoax. Predictive programming, concurrent programming, immediate political utility, crisis actors, concurrent drills right before, water bottles, lanyards, laughing crisis actors. There are so many things that would give you some kind of idea here. Manifestos, fresh out of ChatGPT, posted on X. So you have this like package deal. And then you know who did it, why it was done, and the disposition of the person, whether they're going into custody because they're mentally ill or they kill themselves. But it's all the same if it's a PSYOP. And PSYOP psychological operations get proliferated. Everybody hears about it instantly. You don't hear so much about the real events, and if there is a real event, you don't get all the information. Like this one with Henderson Solomon. It's like, why are we hearing all these details and getting first-hand accounts from minors in a school? They shouldn't even be on the news unless their parents are signing waivers. If it's a real event, you don't get all the information right away. Okay, is that a bot? Kick Team says, we noticed you're having technical issues. Maybe incorrect settings in Streamlabs. Contact tech support at kick.com. Is that a bot or is that somebody trying to be helpful? Isabel Ann says, Luigi's going to get off. Free Luigi. His lawyers say he was detained improperly. It's insane. Yes, exactly. Insane. Someone who shot a CEO would walk because cops didn't take him outside. They're saying that it was compromised. And I was watching that live Luigi thing, and it was all Luigi fans. They're like, where do we send our panties? Like, they're obsessed with him. And this is what they did for... And I mean, I was like, this is disgusting. You're all psychos. And they were saying to me, you're just jealous. It's like, what do you mean? I'm not jealous of a murderer and the attention he's getting from a bunch of psychos. Do you think that I want the types of people who fawn over a murderer to give me attention? Like, no thanks. Like, those are precisely the type I'm trying to avoid for the rest of my life. Thank you. You can have them, Luigi. But it's crazy how they're just fawning over this guy and they're justifying it. And these aren't bots. These aren't posed. This isn't some parody of extremism. The leftists love Luigi and they want him to go free. And now this ties into Joker 2. Now this is interesting as well. When Joker 2 came out, I noticed there's some connection here. Joker 2 comes out, Beetlejuice 2 comes out, Smile 2 comes out, and the second shooter goes after Trump, Ryan Routh. Ryan Routh laughing while detained, green and blue hair gives you green. Beetlejuice, green hair, Joker archetype. And in Beetlejuice, you have Trump dead in the underworld. And then Joker 2 comes out, and in Joker 2, he's on trial. His fans are outside, and his girlfriend bombs it, Harlequin. So his female supporter, a female fan who is so obsessed with him, she faked mental illness to get into the asylum, to hang out with him, to fall in love with him. So you have that aspect of it. So it seems like Joker 2, and also, I mean, there are so many elements here. Joker 2, of course, was being filmed outside of the courthouse when Trump was arrested on 4/4/23, and people said, driving by, that they thought the crowd was there for Trump, but they were there for Joker, the riotous mob. That also happened to be the 44th birthday of Heath Ledger. Well, posthumous birthday. And it was the anniversary of MLK's assassination. Interesting date. But again, Joker 2 and Luigi. But I brought up Beetlejuice, Ryan Routh, and Joker because the green hair. And then you get Luigi, and he's associated with what? Green. Green hoodie, the name Luigi, green character, green beret. I alluded to the Green Beret who blew up himself, but also the Cybertruck in front of the Trump Tower. So that you have these elements here that I'm just pointing out. It's kind of code. But there is something here in the Metascript for free Luigi. It's definitely there. They're projecting pictures of him on New York. You know, I was going to do a watercolor of Luigi, like live. I sold a charcoal drawing of him. I did it in 10 minutes, and I sold it for like $15. I'm like, that's easy. But if I do a live painting of Luigi, I could probably raise a considerable amount of money, especially if I promise to donate some of it to his GoFundMe. And I would. In good conscience, I would donate 20% of a painting of Luigi to his GoFundMe. So let's say I sold it for $10K. I'd give $2,000 to his GoFundMe, and I wouldn't feel bad because I know it's fake. Violet Pengon says, Luigi Mangione had 24 women waiting in the cold for public seats in the courtroom. Cope says, Luigi will walk and get murked by some crazy Q-pipe addict. Well, you'll notice this too. So Luigi comes out of the madness. He even used a ghost gun, a 3D printed gun, just like in the madness. And as he gets arrested, Daniel Penny gets set free. Daniel Penny, top earning, give, send, go, right-wing vigilante, taking out a poor person in the subway. And the subway represents the underclass in class warfare. In fact, I wrote an article about this, about the symbolism of the subway in class warfare and how it ties into the Joker movies. How Joker and Batman start off in subways. Joker killed the rich guys in the subway. It's all symbolic. These scenes are highly significant. Frank James firing 33 rounds into the subway car as a protest against the mayor and their the lack of resources for the mentally ill and the homeless. So it's all class warfare stuff. That's been one of the main things here, class warfare. But there's certainly something going on here. The way that they've lauded this individual as a hero. And so the LUIGi-ITES are all those who support him. But Daniel Penny killed somebody on a subway. And he killed a class enemy to the upper class. The poor, violent subway guy that they've been harping up on. There was like a chorus of get out of the subways, get out of the cities on the right. So Daniel Penny took out a class enemy. But he represents who? Well, after he got out, Daniel Penny was hanging out with Donald Trump at that Navy game. Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Daniel Penny. So Daniel Penny's up here. Now he works for like J.P. Morgan. So it's all narrative, though. He gets out as Luigi goes in. So you have these two class warriors for each side. One representing the working class, one representing the elite. And the vigilante for the elite goes free. The vigilante for the working class gets thrown in jail. And the people who want Luigi out think that Daniel Penny still ought to be in. Sync Kid says, did you see Mellowcat video of informed lady tracking the plane, spraying over a house and confronting the airport when landed? Skeptic on the chemtrails here. Interesting. I'm glad. Look, when it comes to lights in the sky, alleged drones or space stations, I reject your evidence if you don't have a video or a photo with metadata. Like, I just can't take hearsay. You can't just tell me you saw it. You can't take say I saw it on TV. No, it has to be something more tangible. And so this has to apply to everything, even chemtrails. If you're going to say you saw a chemtrail, I'm going to say, show me a picture. If you're like, oh, there's this dangerous, poisonous cloud above my house, but I didn't take a picture of it, then you're not serious. If you're serious about it, then you need to go ahead and take the effort to take a photo of it. And then you could track it. And I had this idea. I could debunk chemtrails, where I would do it by having, we'll say, the top 100 or so conspiracy channels out there pushing chemtrails to send me their best evidence of a chemtrail and give me the metadata, the photo, date, time, location, and I'll correlate it with the airplanes, just like they did with the drones to debunk the drone sightings. And then we'll show that, one, these aren't secret military jets, and then two, we will examine the persistent chemtrail occurrences against the climactic conditions that plane was experiencing at that moment. And we will find out if there's a correlation here between altitude, humidity, air pressure, temperature, and persistent chemtrails or not. I mean, chemtrails don't exist. It's really not a claim you can substantiate. It's a superstition at this point. Same with UFOs. There's no ufology. It's not an ology. It's a superstition. There's no chemtrailology. There is no systematic study of chemtrails. So it's already been debunked. If somebody believes in it, it's because they're a believer in something, but they're not a knower. They don't know the truth. There's a big difference. It's a superstition at this point. And it's also true that only right-wing or non-left believe in chemtrails. Because if you're at all politically informed, leaning left, you're going to say chemtrails are fake, but contrails are real because they cause climate change. Because climate change and geoengineering are two explanations for the same phenomena. Both fake as well. Violet Pangon says Trump is stopping the chemtrails anyway. Supposedly, with U.S. aid cuts, they stopped the chemtrails. It's like, no, the weather's changing. It's predictable. I could just tell you right now that they're going to say there's chemtrails next November as the weather cools down. And then they're going to say they stop spraying as the spring rolls around. It just really depends. You know, back in 1958, there was this Air Force chart, the Appleman chart, that was published. And it's a chart they use so that Air Force planes avoid creating trails. Contrails are predictable. Chemtrails are not. That's the bottom line. Because chemtrails are not predictable and contrails are, chemtrail theory loses. It lost. Owls says, great to catch you live. Thanks for joining. And if you go to ips.monster, you'll get live stream notifications. Dwayne Obith says, brilliant. Create imaginary problems and then be heralded as a savior. 5D chess. Well, it's all repetition. It's like, the immigrants are coming, I'll save you. They get them in office, nothing changes. They never built the wall. They grifted millions of dollars. Steve Bannon got $4 million to build a wall, and he never built a wall. Personally, I think that he should be doing forced labor, brick by brick, building it until he's worked off that $4 million. Jamarian says, how come we never hear about Stormy Daniels anymore? Yeah, that Stormy Daniels thing was really prevalent right before Trump went to jail. And a lot of people said, oh, it ties into the Q drop 55. The storm is coming. And then, of course, there was just all these strange connections that were there. And it just seems like it's another one of these just props. Probably fake. It really threw the transvestigationists for a loop. Because they were just so insistent on their view that everything is backward, inverted, and the opposite of what you would think. But they couldn't refute the evidence provided by Stormy Daniels. They hated that one. I really dislike the topic. Candace Owens is deep into it these days. She's been nearly, I don't know, I guess threatened by the lawyers of French President Macron's wife for her claims. Although Candace Owens has also been, investigated by the same delusionists. There are so many delusional belief systems that waste so much time, and it all comes down to gaslighting. I think it really comes down to gaslighting. Dwayne Obith says, immigration and abortion are never meant to be resolved. Yeah, absolutely. These things are not only unresolvable, but they're designed to maintain a perfect schism. People are so programmed, it's sad, but if somebody is, because there's like belief clusters. In fact, I want to release something here. I have an outline. It's going to be in Live World very soon. But I've been working on this whole idea of the schism for some time, and how it's, once you expose it, it's pretty obvious and it's impossible not to see it. But there are certain dynamics they set up that are based on human psychology and on maintaining division. I talk about guns versus needles, or guns and wombs. So the right wing is associated with like toxic masculinity, guns. Left wing is associated with toxic femininity and the pro-abortion stance. And the same attitude that they're going to take our guns from the right, and they're worried about the left, they're going to take our guns, it's reflected on the left. They're going to regulate our wombs. And so if you look at guns and wombs in this context, and then associate these with masculine, feminine, and then what is a gun but a very masculine symbol, if you look at it in a Freudian sense, active, principle. And then you look at the womb, of course, and so it's interesting how each side is trying to regulate the other side, but at a deeper level, because it's almost like they're going to castrate us. They're going to turn us into broodmares. So at a very primal level, people are being threatened. And these threats are the weapon in this mind war. They're not going to actually fulfill these things. They're not going to follow through with it, but it's the threat that keeps people on edge. Like the threat that the world's about to end. Rules for Radicals #9. Rules for Radicals, Saul Alinsky. I believe he was a mentor to Obama and Clinton. He dedicated his book to Lucifer. community organizer Saul Alinsky. But rules for radicals, rule number 9, the threat of the thing is more terrifying than the thing. And that seems to be their modus operandi, the threat of the thing. And it never actually comes into fruition. They've never grabbed your guns. They're never going to. They never forced vaxxed you. They're never going to. They're not going to take away abortion. They're not going to take away anything. They're not going to build walls. Jamarian says, will Armoon be writing the foreword of Lie World Order? Well, Lie World Order is already written. It was a shorter book, but I've been expanding it. Originally, I wrote it with a collection of diagrams to explain the model itself. So the way I look at it is you can imagine a pyramid. And the bottom of the pyramid is the world stage. And it's all in darkness, or rather it's spotlit by the capstone. And then everything beyond it is darkness. So whatever the capstone does not shine its spotlight on doesn't exist. It's a closed informational system. But the people at the bottom are believers in these various belief systems, which they often cannot reality test at the fringes. The knowers, the programmers, are higher up on the pyramid, but all up the pyramid, it's stratified, and the programming class exists at different levels of awareness about the extent of the overall fakery and how monolithic it is. But there's a enormous disparity between those at the bottom and those at the level of the PSYOP entertainment complex. And this knowledge disparity is significant because we're talking about people who know and people who merely believe because they've been told. And the believers are not allowed to know. That's the discrepancy here. That's the main distinction. They're not allowed to know. So conspiracy theorists realize they're being lied to, but they're fed alternative lies. Alt media is alt lies. Mainstream media is mainstream lies. And this whole system is built on lies. And by lies, I simply mean a worldview monopoly, a selective interpretation that imposes its version over objective reality. It's subjective. And to the extent that it's subjective, it's a big lie. Objectivity only exists for those at the top of the capstone, the programmers who are appraised of it in its entirety. And I would argue that there aren't many of them because the multitude of programmers are themselves highly programmed, or it wouldn't work. It's possible Musk isn't fully in the know. Our perspective here, recognizing the world stage as a closed informational system, is an objective stance. We do have a level of objectivity that you don't get if you're not on the capstone. But we're not. We got there without blood oaths, without security clearances, without anything more than critically examining what we've been told and not kowtowing to the peer pressure of alt media that told us not to call things fake. All right, let's continue. Owl says, another psyop for the right is to fear Bovaer, the medicine they gave cows to stop climate change. The left fears free cows, right fears medicated cows for fake climate fear. Yeah, it's fascinating too how it's the bifurcation. So you take something like persistent trails behind an airplane, and they both look at the same thing. So lefty will see it, and the right guy will see it. Lefty will say it's a contrail, which is true. It is a contrail. The right one will say, no, it's a chemtrail. But they both look at the same thing. They have different interpretations. But both of their interpretations are valid from the perspective of something must be done. Instead of something must be done, I mean, and this is the main thing, is that they get both sides to agree. So it's kind of like, how do you get both sides to accept a faulty premise? And it doesn't matter if they disagree on how it happens. Same thing with like Maui or the LA fires. Left wing will say it was climate change caused by, obviously, the private sector. The right wing will say, no, it was secret government direct energy weapons. So it comes from the government. So one side is always blaming government, one side is blaming private sector, and that's, of course, by design. And both sides are fundamentally wrong because these things are engineered and fake. Maui fires weren't abnormal. The Los Angeles fires weren't something special. I mean, maybe they're worse than usual, but I mean, I would argue that these are controlled demolitions, contrived, not caused by climate change. It's a scapegoat. Not caused by direct energy weapons, secret government projects, another scapegoat. But if there's any major event or crisis that both sides agree happened, it's fake, in my view, because their interpretations are always just too predictable. It shouldn't have been that easy. When LA happened, we had already expected it because of the movie Homestead. And as it happened, we were looking at Steven Gutenberg and lavalantulas, and we're like, okay, this is seemingly very psyop-y. And I was like, watch. Lefties are going to say climate change did it. Right wing's going to claim direct energy weapons or negligence from the government. So they still blame the government. Trump even blamed Governor Newsom. And they're not going to unite the two sides in any meaningful way. They're always going to be divided perpetually, but they're pulled by a single yoke. Dwayne Aubith said, it's curious how instead of postulating arson was the cause, they came up with something fantastic as space lasers. Easier to discredit them it makes them look unhinged. And that was, of course, by design. But they also said, no, it was caused by illegal immigrants starting fires. And you saw these viral videos of alleged illegal immigrants starting fires. So now it's the open borders, government caused it. Negligence, government caused it. But it shouldn't be that predictable. Reality shouldn't be that predictable. And something else, too, I remember there was this, the Hollywood sign was burning. There was this video. And the QAnoners were like, yep, Hollywood's burning. It's a sign from God. And the Hollywood sign is burning. And it was some kind of message about how the deep state's going to get it. And Q was behind it. And then you had big accounts sharing this. Like one of them was Milo Yiannopoulos, who's got millions of followers for some reason. And he's like, this is down the street from me. This is happening. And the next day, there were people walking around videotaping this thing and putting it on TikTok and just blown away because it didn't burn. So there were people responding to that event as though everything that I saw on the internet was as it was actually happening, and it actually was largely exaggerated. Your perceptions are constantly being manipulated from all sides. Clickbaiters are the worst. You know, alt media is now just clickbait media, and it's purely reactionary, and it's alt propaganda. There aren't any people in alternative media who have any more credibility than mainstreamers or wokesters. I mean, I hate to say it, but, you know, wokesters and red pillars are in the same box. They're in a subset of the mainstream. Alex Jones is woke, but he's alt woke. He's red pill woke, but it's the same thing. There are so many parallels. The political horseshoe theory was implemented into the model they created. And that's why it's so perfect. These aren't coincidences. When I talk about this lie world order and this bifurcation, what I'm talking about here fundamentally is the implementation of the political horseshoe, where it does look like at the extremes they resemble each other. Can you tell the difference between a soy boy and a Proud Boy? Between Antifa and Patriot Front? Same costumes. Same grievances, just different scapegoats. What's the difference between CRT and CJT? You know, critical race theory, racism and whites do everything, or critical Jew theory, anti-Semitism and Jews control everything. These are identical. But again, it's the horseshoe because they never actually meet. Like a horseshoe, it's not a full circle, but they get very close. But the bifurcation is very obvious with every single shooting psyop. They'll say, and this happened with the last shooter. I mean, I'm always hearing this stuff. The left will say it's because of guns and gun culture. And the right will say, nope, it's SSRIs. So if you're a right-winger in conspiracy theory, culture or not, you're inclined to think that antidepressants cause mass murder. Alex Jones says it. Tim Pool says it. All the right-wing talking heads say SSRIs cause mass murder. It's the dumbest thing ever. But they say it like a mantra. They've been saying it since Adam Lanza. And they're saying this strategically, rhetorically, because they want to take the blame off of the Second Amendment, because they don't want the guns to be taken. Because Alex Jones has told them for years that they're going to take your guns, and they're sending MK Ultra wind-up toy assassins, pumping them up on pills and then sending them in to do the kills. That's actually been a reoccurring story, that all the shooters are MK Ultra mind control. MK Ultra mind control is another one of these instances where it's part of the conspiracy culture. It's just a default explanation, but it's almost like this. It's a misdirection line that they implement every single time. And the problem with it is this: if you're going to blame mass shootings on SSRIs, then you're not talking about the fact that the shooting didn't happen. So both sides agree a shooting happened, they just disagree on the cause. Both sides agree that the climate's getting worse, but they disagree on the cause. Both sides agree on everything, but they disagree on the cause. So does it matter? No, it doesn't. Both sides are controlled. Alt media is controlled opposition, and if you follow these controlled opposition puppets, what does it make you? You're one of them. Neurojack says right wing is basically Scientology. Well, Scientology is a space religion. The dominant religion of the day is pretty much NASAtology. Scientology is built on a pandemic model. I mean, this is what's interesting too, is I would argue that the pandemic is a way of introducing the concept of sin and a devil to the atheistic progressive utopians. The same way they believe in aliens, because it's like angels for the atheists. They believe in space, it's heaven for the atheists. The virus is a construct very much like sin that allows the priesthood to regulate the sheeple down to the level of the individual, and it separates the saved from the unsaved, who trusts the church of media and who does not. And that division is one of the central components to the world stage, keeping everyone divided between saved and unsaved. But the way that it works is you divide people into saved and unsaved, and you quarantine. And the right wing does believe in quarantine. They say get out of the cities, go rural. So you have this rural versus urban. The quarantine, go out of the public schools, homeschool. Why? Quarantine. Homeschool, rural, get out of the cities, don't go to Disneyland, and avoid Hollywood. It's all about quarantining. And then so they want to quarantine against leftist values. They want to quarantine against leftist mind viruses and indoctrination. And the lefties want to quarantine against what? Misinformation, and of course the hate that they associate with it, and the anti-vaxxers because they're toxic. But this is the idea. Each side quarantines against the other. And now Scientology is based on the idea that until you've been through their process, you are full of mind viruses and you're spreading them all the time. And they call these mind viruses engrams. And that we passively collect these things as we go through our lives. And unless we have them purged through these confessional-like auditing sessions, you will always carry them. But they say we cannot solve the world's problems until we take all these saved, or the quote cleared. You've been cleared from engrams, usually about the time they've cleared your bank account. But all those who've been cleared quarantine, or quote disconnect from the SPs. The SPs are the suppressive people. So the anti-vaxxers are the super spreaders, the SPs in this paradigm. So it's the same paradigm. So the pandemic model, Scientology model, it's about clearing the world, vaxing the world, quarantining against the super spreaders until they can be all converted. And even one carrier is a threat to the whole system. This is how cults work. One individual apostate is a threat to the entire congregation. But I think that the 2020 event was a way of reiterating many of the basic tenets of our new world religion, because that is what the media is. It is the world state church. Nasatology is our religion, and scientism constitutes its doctrines. The scientists have a priesthood-like role, and they do offer salvation. And of course, they do have a division between sinners and the saved, and they do have modern-day blasphemies and heresy, misinformation, and conspiracy theories. Thinkerbell says, 2020 study, the cost of stratospheric aerosol injection through 2100, total expenditures over the program's duration, $250 billion to $2.5 trillion. Well, what is stratospheric aerosol injection? Because what you're seeing with the condensation trails occur in the stratosphere because the temperatures at 30,000 feet are lower. The temperature goes down a couple degrees every 1,000 feet, and it's because contrails, to demystify it, are basically ice. It's basically trails of, it's just ice crystals. We don't have contrails lower than that because they don't form at that level. I mean, it's actually just basic observational data. I mean, it's the scientific methodology is not something to avoid or to be ignorant of. We shouldn't be anti-science. Scientism is anti-science. Science as orthodoxy, as belief system, as dogma. There's a point where it becomes orthodoxy, it becomes a religion. Same with media. You know, you can't question the news or questioning the past news. Can't do that. Questioning the news in the past is like hate or something. Settled journalism, settled science. If it's settled, it means it's closed to new information. Settled science is closed. It's a closed informational system. It's no longer science. It's no longer the pursuit of knowledge. It's the reinforcement of belief. Settled journalism, yeah, it's no longer journalism if you can't ask certain questions. It's a closed informational system. Dwayne Aubith says, all is mind, the first hermetic principle. Yeah, sometimes I think matter is a substrate of mind. Makes the most sense to me. King Ravana says, supreme spread pudding. No, now you super spreaders. I was getting to super spreaders in Scientology. So I was part of Scientology for a little while. Not a member. I mean, I don't know if you join it in that sense. I guess you do. But I was studying at one of their orgs. And I was reading Dianetics. And I wanted to know about it. And I believe that the best way to know is to go find out in person instead of relying on apostates or former Scientologists who tell you their version. So I wanted to see for myself. And I did experience this notion of like the super spreaders and quarantining, because they said, well, you can't associate with this person anymore. It's like, oh no, your girlfriend's not going to join Scientology, then you're going to have to eventually split up because if they do this and this and this. And there's a list of things that were considered to be essentially, I guess, toxic or in some way, for example, drinking, smoking, going to certain nightclubs. These types of things are, if you attend them, you catch engrams. It's like with the lockdowns. So Scientology is actually a lockdown religion. Not a coincidence that they actually have underground bases. They have one here in Tremenia, New Mexico. And in these underground bases, they have all of their books etched in titanium. So if there's a flood, after the flood, they can return to the surface and they can clear the survivors. Scientology might actually end up being, I think it kind of might even be the designated religion of the future. Maybe not under that name. But my point here is that just replace virus with mind virus, and you can understand Scientology. And mind viruses didn't really exist. Like as far as like the public wasn't talking about mind viruses. It wasn't a thing. until Musk started talking about the woke mind virus. And the concept of mind viruses was popularized by Richard Brody, who was one of the original programmers, like the original Word. So Word, Microsoft Word, Richard Brody wrote a book called Virus of the Mind. And this is where the idea became popularized, that you could catch ideas, and therefore we need to be protected. We need to be inoculated, vaxxed against ideas, because you can catch it just by being around it. You don't have to think about it. I mean, that's pretty bad. Imagine if you could catch Jehovah's Witness, or if you could catch flat earth. You just hear something, you catch it. Like, I don't operate that way. I have critical thinking, but the public, to an increasing extent, does not. I mean, the public is being trained to not exercise that kind of critical thinking when it comes to media. Auto believers, no mental immune system, maids, the mind aids, as we call it here. But they reintroduced the concept of the mind virus in stages. I remember how it happened. I mean, I've been observing this. First, it was safe spaces. Safe spaces on universities to protect students from what? From right-wing conservative memes. So it went from safe spaces, and then we had 6 feet of separation, social distancing, and quarantine to create safe spaces from physical viruses. So they set the premise. You quarantine from mind viruses or ideas that hurt your feelings, that trigger you. Now we quarantine from physical viruses. And then you make this connection to the right-wing conservatives who not only spread the mind viruses, but are carriers of the viruses because they're anti-vax because of the mind viruses that told them to be anti-vax. So now you have this connection made between safe spaces, social distancing, mental or mind viruses, and physical viruses. They have introduced, in the last 5 years, the thought crime. They have isolated the mind virus, the disease X, the madness. Didn't exist, now it exists. Space junk didn't exist, now it exists. It's falling in Kenya, in North Carolina, in Australia. A piece of space junk went through a roof in Florida, and the family sued NASA for $90,000. Now, hypothetical here. If any of you are willing to punch a hole in the roof of your house and put a chunk of metal that's all charred up on your bed, and you were to say, hey, space junk hit my house, how would NASA or SpaceX or any of these agencies refute that? Would they say, no, that's fake? Because I don't think they want fake to be associated with space junk. It's almost like you could get in on the scam. You know, we could probably get in on it. It's almost like blackmailing NASA in a sense. Like, yeah, we're going to play along. Like, we know it's fake, you know it's fake, we know that you know it's fake, but we can't say it's fake, so you're just going to pay up. Like, it's to the point where it's so fakeable. But my hypothetical is this. If you were willing to make it look like your house was hit by space junk, and we got some crisis actors to do it with us, and we presented it to the news, how would anybody call it fake? Like, what would be their basis for calling it fake? The basis for it being real is it looks real and I saw it on TV, but who's the authority on this? I think it'd be interesting to take advantage of this public credulity, their willingness to believe anything, especially the absurd proposition of space junk punching holes in people's roofs. And it's not new. I mean, they've been doing asteroids. They had an asteroid hit, a meteor hit some woman's house in 1956. Fakest story ever. They said it went to the roof, bounced off a radio, hit the wall, then hit her. And she had this like red paint on her side. They said it was a bruise. Didn't look like a bruise. Okay, let's continue here. We're getting back to a regular schedule. I've been busy with a ton of things as far as the art store, and we're getting back to working on South Pole. So in fact, if you want to be involved in South Pole again, just go to The Gilded, and I'll post a link. So one last note here on Luigi. Attorney Tom Dickey filed a motion for unlawfully obtained evidence at the McDonald's arrest. So there's got to be a connection between Trump at the McDonald's, Luigi at McDonald's. There's something here. Luigi firing a shot at the CEO outside of a 47-story building. So CEO 47, and it was the 47-story Hilton where Trump gave his acceptance speech to be the nominee for the 47th presidency. So there's something to that as well. But it says here, Luigi was blocked from the exit by 10 cops. They formed a human wall around him. They seized and searched his backpack out of sight, and they didn't read him his rights. Mizell says, I'm in. 91 Oki says, that's a good idea. Okay, so if you want to fake space junk with me, I am 100% in on it. I mean, I want to actually do an art show with space junk as the main theme. I have a cleaning, a junk hauling business I recently started. I'm getting my tax ID number so I can get onto get a business license here and then get approved for a Google listing so I can get reviews. But it's Haul 9000. So if you have any junk and you need to clear up some space, it's space junk themed, Haul 9000. And I was thinking eventually I'm going to find what I need to create my own space junk. Just, sculptural works. Joe Santos says, there's one South Park episode in the future. There's no religion, and they say in the early 2000s they figured out religion was fake. Well, the public is going to be let in on it. They have been over time, that religions are all fake, but it's going to be replaced by what they think is a scientific paradigm, but it's a new religion. Like, I would argue that the modern worldview is a religion. It has all the trappings. It can be explained by syncretism. You replace heaven with a version that atheists will believe in. You replace everything. I mean, even the flood myth, Noah's Ark, climate eschatology, what's the difference? Angry Gaia, angry Jehovah, the wicked getting flooded, what's the difference? There is no difference. Tinkerbell says our hamster is named Hell 9000. Yeah, well, Hall 9000 wasn't my idea. I went to ChatGPT to get ideas for a junk hauling business. I think Hall 9000, Armin Reed came up with it. And I was like, I need to do a business on the side to fund the IPS because I want to fund this operation from outside sources other than just the platforms, because we've seen what they do. They can cancel you. And I want to be uncancelable. We're unlockdownable, but I want to be uncancelable. And I can do it with this junk hauling and other projects. The art seems to be the thing. And I may actually do a live Luigi stream. So if you want to watch me paint Luigi in watercolors, go to infiniteplane.live, and that's the YouTube channel I'll be doing it on. And I'm going to sell it for probably $10,000, and I'll give 20% of it to Luigi's GoFundMe. Once the LUIGi-ITES find out that I'm going to give money to his GoFundMe, they'll probably bid on it. Joe Santos says the space junk art is a great idea. I've had that idea for about 2 or 3 years. I actually have a script having to do with a space junk themed sitcom. I've been really obsessed with space junk since they first started talking about it. And I said, hey, this is the next big thing. They're going to bring it out. So, yeah, I'm a fan of space junk. I'd like to have a piece of space junk here. In fact, I might just go do it. I need to think about making the space junk. And then if somebody wants to let us punch a hole in your roof, so that way that your local news can look at it. I mean, I know how to do this. I know how to run a PSYOP. I've been studying this stuff for some time. Sync Kid says, Baha'i faith seems like the UN religion of choice. It may be. Wasn't there like Lucius Trust, some new age thing? There are all kinds of religions that are still compatible. That's the thing. All the other religions are compatible with the big religion. The big religion is heliocentrism. Big Bang, evolution, ball earth, mainstream media church and its priesthood, Nasatology, scientism. That is the new religion. The contemporary myths like 9/11, contemporary miracles like walking on the moon, that was walking on water for this religion. But we're 100% in a religion. Thinkerbell says, we're covering a lot of info tonight. I have direct info about Sandy Hook willing to share. Yeah, by all means, I'm 100%. I mean, one point, though, is that Sandy Hook and 9/11 are like the twin pillars of trutherism. Like, these are the two big ones. And it's like, you know what? These are the two biggest fake trees in the forest of fakery. And we need to keep in mind that because they've been given inordinate amount of attention doesn't mean that they're more important. And the people who focus exclusively on the big, popular, trendy psyops and don't connect them with the other psyops are generally still in the box. Nobody died, nobody cried is an excellent heuristic, but there's very little ground to be gained here. You know, actually, I have to put this out. I have a video I've been working on having to do with Gabby Petito. I watched that documentary on Netflix, and I did a bit of an overview of it, a review. And one of the things about it is that Gabby Petito and her two brothers were in a Sandy Hook video called Irreplaceable. So her whole family is involved in the PSYOP entertainment complex. And then she gets this, and I watched the whole, and I'll go into it in detail, but my contention is that Gabby Petito is a crisis actress. Brian Laundrie, crisis actor. Their entire van life trip was a movie presented as real. Neurojack says, Palmer Lucky Company sells aerospace junk. I'll take a look. I'm definitely interested, though, in somebody who wants to do a PSYOP. I mean, I was thinking about doing drone PSYOPs back in December, but no, I'm very interested in faking space junk for the reason that I want to know how they're going to call it fake. Like, would they even let that happen? And if I had a piece of space junk and I put it on eBay for $500,000, who's going to call it fake? How would they know? Like this, in other words, they can't just suddenly come up with standards of evidence that they never used before. You know, the standard of evidence is, I saw it on the news, or this guy reported a boom on his roof, and here it is. Very low. So I'm just suggesting here that we could fake a space junk hit, and I would be interested to see how they would screen that information. So I want to test it. Okay, well, I'm going to get back to my other computer. I'm going to work on South Pole. If you want to get involved there on this one, there's still time. If not, you'll probably want to after watching this one. We're just getting started, but it's off to a good start, and I expect to have it done by Friday. So I'll keep you appraised of that. When I have a premiere scheduled, I'll send out a link. Yeah, exactly, Thinkerbell. How can they authenticate space junk? Like, who are they? You know, say yours is fake, but ours is real. And this is, to me, this is just sort of a test. It's an experiment. We'll see what they do with it. Because if they don't have standards of evidence, if they're forced to believe it because they're not allowed to refute it, if they can't call it fake, then they're kind of going to have to swallow it. It'll be fun. Joe Saunter says there'll be a serial number on everything etched in it unless it's melted. Well, all we have to do is scratch SpaceX into the side of it or put a sticker on there, and that's all the internet will need to believe it. I mean, we could technically pull it off with just AI, but to get the local news involved, you need some kind of a prop. Michelle K says, Trump took the moon rock out of the White House. Yeah, he did. They took the petrified wood out of the White House because they're planning to go to Mars. Neurojack says the Men in Black might show up. Yeah, exactly. Like, is that too far? Like, when do we go too far? I mentioned that book earlier, In the Country of the Blind, And the people who found out that the news is being manipulated by a small cabal with lots of money and a supercomputer, they were killed one by one. In Utopia, when a group of comic book nerds find out that the comic books are predicting the future with specificity regarding upcoming epidemics, they get killed off one by one. So what line do we have to cross before they send out their men in black? It's an interesting question. I think we would have crossed it by now if there was such a line. I don't think they have any way to deal with us. I don't think that there is a controlled opposition, limited hangout setup prepared to handle a tidal wave of auto hoaxers, of media skeptics, of fakeologists. They're not built for it. They can deal with flat earthers. They can deal with any kind of conspiracy theorist, anti-vaxxers, yeah, it's a no-brainer, but they can't deal with media skeptics because the information that we traffic in here is above their pay grade. You know, we are trafficking in information that you don't get unless you sacrificed babies and took the blood oath and compromised yourself in a million different ways. And we do it. We get there because we kind of open source everything. This is the fast track to the truth. You don't have to join the Illuminati. Just join the IPS. We get their information and we open source it. This is actually like, in a way, it's a democratizing of the information that is used to keep people in a yoke, on a global yoke. Everyone is tied to the same monolithic structure. Mizell says, I'm reading that book. I'm considering selling my copy of In the Country of the Blind on eBay. I think maybe I should start buying copies of all the books that I read and advocate and put them up on the store. It might be useful. I do want to talk about books more. We always talk about movies. We always talk about video games. But I think we should get more into predictive programming in literature and other books that we just find interesting. All right, well, this has been great. Thank you all for hanging out. We'll continue this conversation tomorrow. We'll start much earlier. I'm surprised I made it on time. I had a book I was working on. It's not really all that relevant to what we're doing here, but it is relevant to my art business. I've been selling baseball card size paintings since 2008. It's a very specific format, 2.5 inch by 3.5 inch. And there's a few reasons why I stick with this particular format. A lot of reasons, in fact. And since 2008, and I can prove this, I have photos of every single one. I've sold more than 10,000 of them. I don't own any of my own artwork. Like, I don't own any of these. I make them and I sell them, and I have a system. So I published a book here, How to Sell More Artwork with Art Cards, Editions, and Originals, the Definitive ACEO Seller's Guide. The Artist's Secret Weapon. There's quite a lot here. If you're an artist, whatever kind of artist, even a tattoo artist, you'll probably find something of value in here, especially today. There's never been a better time, thanks to the internet, to be an independent creator. But this book is a way to exponentially increase the number of people who own original works of art from you and have a direct line of connection, of communication with you. So I put a link at timosmond.art. Thank you, Marcel. Art Bell, Princess Buttercup, Good Old Fashioned, Queen Diamond B, They Lie We See have all received the Blue Wrench Lodge membership. Yeah, here I am, more than 10,000. And that's just, the reason why I'm saying that is that it's like a way of describing how this, of showing you how this actually works, that I do know a bit about selling art. If there is anybody who's an authority on selling small works of art, it would be me. And I knew this when I started. I had a system, and I was just going for high volume, low prices, and there's some advantages to it. And what I have here my eBay store. This is the store I opened when I decided to do this again. It was a couple years ago. So in 2 years, this store has sold 1,300 items. So last year, according to eBay on their site, I sold 452. And then I sold many more through my own shop. But my point is that I've consistently sold more than 1,000 from 2008 on. Last couple of years, a little slower, but I'm picking up again. And I've probably moved about 150 in the last month. But I have a system here. These are just some examples. I'm not going to get deep into it here, but if you are an artist and you are interested in looking for ways to sell more art, this is a way. It's a method. The art card should be your business card. Lesko says, I have a crazy stack of IPS art cards. I appreciate that. And one of the reasons why I focus on this format is that you can take advantage of the collecting card industry. You know, Pokemon, baseball cards. Every store carries these protective cards for these small works. They can survive the UPS, the USPS. They can survive being in someone's pocket, and they're virtually indestructible. Better than NFTs. And their value could go up. I used to say that my ACEOs are like real life shitcoins, to use the expression, meaning that they may not have a lot of value now, but once they reach a critical mass, all their value goes up at once. So there's might be some advantage to collecting the work. I don't know. It's not predictable. It's not like I can just cut off my ear or die a tragic death and the work becomes more valuable. But I happen to think that there is value in this, in art cards for artists overall. All right, everyone, thank you for joining. This is 33rd Degree, Lucifer Tim. Sign up for the newsletter at ips.monster for live stream updates.